I think we all want to succeed. We all have purposes or goals in life that we want to accomplish, but we never end up fulfilling them. For so long, I used to create so many goals or achievements, and I would tell everyone that I'm going to accomplish them, but I never ended up really completing them. But it was so simple. I just had to do it, but I couldn't. And I was frustrated. I couldn't just simply go to the gym. I just couldn't simply do my homework. I couldn't just simply do this. And no matter how many times I told myself, it's for your future, it just didn't work. And it was like I was subconsciously sabotaging myself. 2 years ago, I realized what the secret was. And the secret is not really a secret, but it's just truly understanding yourself and how humans actually work. There is a method to take action even if you don't feel like it. And first, we just have to focus on the basics of our mind. Spoiler alert, our mind is created by us. And it sounds obvious, doesn't it? Humans tend to crave the easy way out. We don't want to do difficult things. When someone tells you to run 10 miles, what is the first response you're thinking of? Is it oh, I can't do it, oh, that's too hard? As you can see, our mind is trained to stray away from things that are too hard for us. And it isn't a bad thing, but it's just how we are built. However, if this task was easier and easier to process and do, then we would have a better emotion to it. So this leads to our first theory, called Freud's psychoanalytic theory, where we have the ego, the ID, and superego. And we all have a self-concept, and we all have an ego. Remember, the ID is your impulsive part of your personality, which means that it wants, fun, it doesn't want any pain, while the superego is more like the morally correct part of your personality, one that is very judgmental. Your ego is sort of your middle guy, and that is where it balances between the ID and superego. And the ego is the conscious part of your personality. Most people tend to protect their ego from hard things, and some people tend to lead either into the ID or superego more, which is totally fine. Everyone is built differently, but it's important to differentiate and how to change, so that you are leaning more into kind of that conscious drive rather than ID and slacking off a little bit more. And a large part of our theory comes from how we grew up. And that is such a big thing, but we can always change it. So for example, let's say throughout your childhood, you grew up with very, very positive words and environment. If something hard comes into your life, you would naturally avoid it because you're afraid to harm your ego. Let's say everyone tells you, wow, you're super smart. Wow, you're always so good at everything that you do. And if something hard comes your way, you're going to want to avoid it. And the same thing goes for if you grew up with very negative words around your childhood. If people keep saying you couldn't do it or couldn't do this, you're naturally going to back away from things that are challenging because you're just going to prove those people right. So it's really important to make sure that you're aware of kind of how your brain works, how you naturally react to certain things. And that is the first step in trying to get our brain to crave hard things. So now understanding the resistance that keeps us from doing something that we can do is important. We want to try to create as least amount of resistance we can for a certain task. We definitely want to decrease that resistance to make it easier, and our resistance comes from our stress, our negative emotions, our thoughts around that. We want to avoid it and make that task easier for ourselves because then we would be more willing to do it. This is why I always emphasize breaking down your tasks into very manageable, small size tasks. Because if you can do small little tasks, you're more willing to do them and it's not that big of an issue for you. To have less resistance, you can start off very, very easy. So let's say I want to go to the gym every day. Well, if I just start tomorrow going every day, I'm going to quickly get burnt out. So try to make it into manageable pieces, right? So instead of going to the gym every day, let's say 2 times a week, 3 times a week. And then after it gets easier and easier, it will slowly build up into something where you can now go every day. And eventually you'll reach that stage where you want to be. But first, don't just jump in and be very impulsive, but plan it out and make sure that it's easy for you to do these things. Now, I mentioned this rule a lot in my other videos, but Also, to create less resistance is definitely doing the 2-minute rule, or essentially just telling yourself to just do it. So this task is essentially where you tell yourself you're going to do a task for 2 minutes, and if you don't want to do that task, then you can simply just not do it. But the trick is that by the time you're doing it, you're already going to not want to stop. So essentially, the moment you kind of start, that's the hardest part, is starting. And once you're in that flow of motion, there's nothing stopping you from completing that task. And so it's important that, that 2-minute rule, that you implement it constantly in your life. And eventually, you wouldn't even need that rule because there's not going to be resistance and you're just going to keep doing it without much struggle. And so what I mean by this is, let's say, again, I want to go to the gym and I don't feel like it. However, I tell myself, you know what, let's just get changed. And the moment I change into my gym clothes, then it's like, oh, I should just go then, I already took that effort to start that task. And so now I'm more willing to do that task because I'm already starting it, if that makes sense. The moment you break that resistance of starting it, you will complete the task eventually. And honestly, at the end of the day, I just tell myself to just do it and just do a little bit. And as long as I just start it and I tried my best, that's all I'll ask for myself. And this leads me to kind of my secret. This secret is not that much of a secret, but essentially, we don't operate at 100% every day. And it sounds obvious, doesn't it? And I feel like we don't often see that, though, that we aren't at 100% every day. I think we always try to push ourselves to the max, even more than we could afford, and then we eventually get burnt out. I realized that this was a constant struggle in my life. And, sometimes there are times where I only feel 40% or I only feel 20%. There are times more often than not that you're not feeling your 100%. But you have to work with that. You cannot push yourself to the max if there is no maximum, if that makes sense. That is how you're going to get burnt out if you don't realize and aren't aware of your energy levels and what you're doing that day. So for example, if I am playing tennis and I only feel 40% of the day, then I will make that session a little bit less intense to match my energy and how I feel, and make the experience enjoyable. Because if I leave that court or that place or that experience having a negative energy, I wouldn't want to go back, and I'm creating future resistance for myself. However, if I make this task easier and I match it to what I'm feeling that day, then I will definitely go again the next day. Nobody can withstand going at 100% every day, but as long as you are trying your best based on how you feel, that is all anyone can ask for and only you can ask for. And it's about you against you. It's not you against anybody else, it's you versus you. Now, a little hack that I learned is stacking. And so this will make your brain crave to do these hard things if you make something fun and enjoyable, like I mentioned before. So for example, again, let's say I'm going to the gym. I'm just saying gym because I feel like a lot of people are very inconsistent with that. But if I'm going to the gym and I am on the treadmill, why don't I make the experience more enjoyable, whether or not I'm watching a show, listening to music? I'm adding things and incorporating things at the same time so that I can have fun with it. If I like to socialize, then I'll add a friend onto call while I'm walking, jogging, something that's more manageable and easy to make the task more fun. The importance is making the task fun and not seem impossible, and it is not hard unless you tell yourself it's hard. I like to remove hard from my vocabulary because it's like hard kind of gives me a blockage in my brain saying that it's too difficult for me. But if I can say it's a good challenging experience, that will make me more willing to go because it's challenging, but it's also something that I know that I can push myself to. If it's hard, people just think it's impossible. If you say challenging, it's a better word for that, if that makes sense. So the way you talk to yourself and the way you talk about these experiences are very, very important. I'm going to put a link into my other video, but I had a really great Notion video on how I decided to understand my bad habits. So I would definitely click there if you haven't already. But understanding your trigger points, why these bad habits happen, why you slack away from them, is, the base starting point on creating these stackable systems. And check it out if you can after this video, but I hope that helps. It's important to align your narratives with your goals. And what I mean by that is, if you want to succeed in a goal, align your narrative to that. And don't tell yourself it's hard. Like I said before, it's important to make sure that, change your words so that it is easy for you to go through with it. Don't say it's hard or, oh, I have to do this. Do it so that I get to do this. I get to improve myself. I get to explore what I can and be better on. There are certain words that you have to remove from your vocabulary. And one of these words that I removed is trying. Instead of trying, do I will do it rather than I'll try to do it. Because I will makes a promise between yourself. And knowing that you can promise yourself and complete with it is better than knowing that, oh, I'm just gonna try. But, trying is more like the effort going there, but not completing the task. But I will is completing the task while trying, if that makes sense. So it's important to change your narrative and align your goals with what you want to be and who you want to be. And one last bonus tip is to keep doing it. The more you do quote unquote hard things, the easier it will become, and there is going to be less resistance every time you do them. Each time you show up, there's going to be less resistance in doing them. And this comes with anything, whether or not you're, going to the gym, you're playing tennis, you're stretching. Each time you do them and you create a personalized routine for yourself, it will get easier and easier to the fact that it's just a habit at this point, Just like when you brush your teeth, that's just a habit. When you shower, that's just a habit. When, you wash your hands before you eat, which I hope you do, it's just a habit. All these habits are buildable. You just have to create less resistance to the point where it's so part of your routine and who you are. So make sure everything that you do aligns with yourself. I hope this video helped clarify and truly understand, your self-concept and how you work and how to get your brain to really, really love doing hard things or quote-unquote hard things. And this is how I do them, and this is what worked for me. I hope this really helped. Thank you so much for all your love and support. I can't believe we're almost at 100 subscribers. I love you all, and I hope to continue to grow with you all. And yeah, thank you so much. Make sure to subscribe, and love you.